I'm thinking, for example, the place of origin or education for those who enter for studies. But you certainly know better than me the database and the theoretical references. And second point, related to one of your findings, why your opinion immigrants who receive an amnesty are less likely inactive and employed? They were already active before the amnesty, or the long absurdity was just mentioned, and even in your speech, Dan, you had to explain quickly, but seems to me a very interesting point about that. And to conclude, in my opinion, it's quite evident that the current political and legislative situation will produce, or better, already produce effects on this aspect. The limitation of the possibility of obtaining certain documents that allow you to stay in Italy is already causing extremely serious situation. A few days ago, during a meeting of an association here in Forlì, we talked about this case of 3 Pakistani workers who have always had a residence permit for work employment reasons, which, according to the new legislation, will not be renewed. They will therefore lose their jobs, they will lose their houses, because without work they will not be able to pay rent. Indeed, they will not find anyone willing to rent that house. It's just an example, but only to say that the type of entry status, legal or undocumented, the existence of a regular employment contract or not, has extremely significant consequences on the whole life of the migrant. It would be of great interest to be able to research on the variables that influence now the labor aspect of migrants, both from a quantitative and qualitative point of view. And now with mixed methods, so it's my goal. So interviews and life stories can also be useful to dialogue with the quantitative data that remain our primary focus. In any case, deepening of migration policies and on how these policies affect the labor market outcomes is one of the aspects that must be detailed, and for this reason, thanks again for your presentation. Many thanks also to Rezart for your very detailed research report, more than a simple abstract or paper. You attempt to provide an overview of an investigative but highly fragmented theme, such as that of the relationship between citizenship and access to employment and higher status job, given the diversity of the several national contexts. It's very remarkable. And if the general conclusion of almost all the studies conducted is that acquisition of citizenship is mainly associated with better employment chance, higher earnings, and higher occupational position, the variation in several national contexts, and also to the citizenship policy condition, must be taken into consideration, as you rightly pointed out in your presentation. Starting from your analysis on the state of the art, and in particular that relating to migrant disadvantage in the labor market, I found a lot of similarities compared to what I analyzed in relation to the access of second-generation migrants and education. It was my research in my PhD. I know it's a partially different population. You specified that you included individuals who were at least 18 years old on arrival, in order to exclude the case of migrants or require destination country citizenship by extension of the naturalization of their parents. But several soft barriers, as they're called by FIMI, are very similar, such as the lack of family and friend support, a lower level of social and human capital, personal but also social gap between immigrant and Italian, a gap not only linked to the parents' qualification, but also to their cultural capital, also because the educational credentials obtained in their country of origin do not have the same value in the labor markets in their country of destination, several language-related issues, their symbolic computation, and so on. And focusing attention on labor issues, anyhow, it's certain that citizenship can eliminate barriers to the public sector, for example, can be in terms of a good process of integration, or at least of a life project for within host country. Naturally, that depends on the real possibilities, on the level of accessibility of citizenship. The contrasting theoretical arguments you propose on how is a faster access to citizenship might influence the citizenship premium are very interesting. On one hand, the risk of a devaluation of the citizenship and the perception for which to have citizenship will be normal and not perceived as a sign of immigration. On the other hand, the incentive for migrants to invest in education in order to reap the benefit of naturalization for a longer period and the related psychological content is important. Also, instead, I will not go into detail of the data analysis. I just want to emphasize, for example, the effort to mitigate possible bias related to the difficulty to disentangle the effect of naturalization from pre-existing differences, and more in general, the endogeneity pursuit. But also the chance to estimate separated models by gender, according to literature, and by the development level of the country of origin. Among your findings, beyond the role played by the classic human capital variables, like education, growth, recency, and age, my attention was drawn to the fact that economic migrants show a lower probability of naturalization than individuals migrating for family reason. And the category of economic migrants, in fact, is much greater also in Italy and increasingly opposed. It would be very interesting in any case to understand, but you already underlined briefly in the text, why the evaluation hypothesis you mentioned related to the ease of access to citizenship seems to hold for occupational status, not for such, and why only for migrant for people. What we would like to stress again, however, is we first focus on the work policies and permits. In this case, citizenship policies are fully interesting. Your analysis suggests that more liberal citizenship policy produce positive effect on employability of the more disadvantaged, such as female immigrants. But at least for Italy, we, a country that has not yet managed to legislate the acquisition of citizenship of children born in Italy by immigrant parents and who have been studying in Italy for 10 years. This of course culture. So therefore, we believe that the process of this in Italy is still very long. Thanks a lot for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, and I invite to reply to this, and after Rezart.
Okay. Well, yeah, the 2 points that you highlighted, the fact that our independent variables, so that the legal status and entry might be affected by other indicators. That's the first point. And I think, yes, of course, and this is why we included other indicators in the multivariate framework. But especially one of the most important variables that affects the possibility of enjoying a legal status since the beginning or not, basically. One of the most important is, of course, the type of permit, because always legal immigrants are generally family dependents, not only, but mostly, and so we included this variable. So also in our analysis, I think it is very important because it is very much related to this aspect. Second point, just few words about the family. You mentioned these Pakistanis, I guess, who were not in the condition of renew their residency. I think this is a very important issue. I mean, with our data, we only looked at an initial condition, initial legal condition. So what happened up to the achievement of the first permit, and then we don't know anything about the trajectories of policies that these individuals must follow in a sense. And this is very important also because, I mean, immigration policies, especially since the 2000s, tend to limit the possibility of renewal of residency permits and so on and so forth. But I mean, this is something that must be addressed with data that are able to follow individuals in their trajectories, and this is maybe, for future purposes, very, very important, but not with this data.
Thank you very much for the discussion and the question. Well, actually you raised a very nice question. And also my conclusions, what we call is, I mean, for further research, to investigate better these issues, because also for us it was a bit striking to find these results. So, but so now I need to speculate a bit. So why we found an effect for occupational status and not for employment? Okay. Maybe because the devaluation hypothesis is much more relevant when an employer has to decide on, let's say, offering better job opportunities than employing a person. So, frankly speaking, I think that normally, in order to, let's think about it practically. You know, I'm an employer. Okay, I want to promote, let's say, an immigrant. Okay. Normally, when I want to promote someone, I could ask him about if he has or not the citizenship, but this does not happen usually when I to employ someone. So it's not common to find an employee who has a prospective employee, you know, you have the citizenship. So this is also a critique on the first mechanism, okay? So this is one of the critiques that someone made us, okay? So this is theory, so it's partially true that an employer could ask the employee, you know, do you have citizenship? Okay, if you have it, okay, I will employ you. But usually it does not happen. So at the margin, this is a bit questionable, okay? So I'm doing a critique of my self-explanation of my mechanism, no? Maybe this is more relevant when an employer has to offer a better job. Looking also to the quality of jobs. Let's say let's say I'm an employer. I want to graduate or I want to promote someone, and maybe I make sure, of course, looking also to the abilities and to all your work record. Maybe I also want to know some more about who I'm going to promote. Is he committed, for example, to stay longer in the destination country? Because let's say also employers invest in the employees. Okay, maybe in this case, this mechanism or this explanation is more relevant. So this is the first, let's say, speculation that comes into my mind. Concerning the differences between gender, well, for this I don't have a specific answer. But of course, more research is needed in order to investigate. Also because with this typology of analysis, we can't look really at the mechanisms itself, okay? Because of the data we have just a cross-sectional data. So we can, for example, observe when people naturalize. So we don't know the moment when people naturalize with this typology of data. So you could have that information with the panel data. So you can compare people before naturalizing with after naturalization. Okay? In that case, maybe you could investigate better also the gender differences because you have more information. But in this case, I mean, it's quite difficult to answer these questions. Thanks.
Are there any questions?
You use the matrix index to
Yes.
see if it's easy to get the naturalization or if it's difficult. Matrix index analyze the policies, so this what we do law in books, analyze the laws in drugs.
Yeah.
So we don't know if an easy policy transforms in a high rate of naturalization. Did you consider in taking into account the rate of naturalization to measure if it is easy to get citizenship for because sometimes the laws are easy, seems to be easy. The matrix index would qualify them as positive measures, but then in practice they are very bureaucratic obstacles for migrants to access citizenship. And matrix would not account for this bureaucratic.
So, if I understood well, is you are suggesting to use this rate of naturalization as an independent variable instead of MyPax?
No, not so much. I'm asking if you consider use this naturalization way instead of migrants. And see
Yeah,
that
as-
there's different.
as a kind of independent variable. So
Yeah.
instead of the migrants index in the econometrical model,
Yeah.
to use this rate.
Yeah.
Okay, I will think about it. But what I'm worried about is that this rate of naturalization maybe is also conditioned from other factors which are maybe not related directly to policy. Of course, they are highly correlated, I guess, so the rate of naturalized people could be highly correlated with the Maltex index at the country level. Yeah, I will investigate it further. It could be a good idea. Yeah,
Just explore it.
And for both of you, very good presentations. I learned a lot. But why didn't you consider the self-employment variable? Because you have excluded part of the sample that are the entrepreneurs that, for instance, for specific citizenship groups are very important. I'm thinking about the Chinese, for instance. And so why not to consider the self-employed situation and only the employment or unemployment status?
Well, actually, I think that the professional qualification index that we use, both as a qualitative indicator of professions or at an easy scale, they do not exclude, by definition, entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs may be, generally, managers, professionals are in the top of this classification, so that they are not excluded by definition. They are not considered differently with respect to the others, so we do not say anything about entrepreneurs. That's a point. That's a point.
They are different.
They are different, of course, I do agree. But we are not excluded, yeah, sure.
well, this is actually a good question, but basically all the mechanisms I talked about relate employees with employers. Okay? If you look at the self-employed, I mean, none of the mechanisms explain it, right? So the signaling, for example, let's talk about signaling. No? So the mechanism was that citizenship signals better integration, and then the employer, okay, takes this signal and, let's say, the willingness to employ the immigrant is higher. If you talk about self-employed people, I mean, this relationship or this mechanism is not in place, at least partially, I think. And one second reason is related to the answer of the colleague, is that self-employed immigrants are quite different from those employed. Sometimes self-employment for some categories, at least for some categories of migrants, is seen as a last resort employment. Okay? So if they don't have a solution, they open a small shop or get self-employed somehow. Okay? So these are very different categories, in my opinion. But the main reason is the first I explained. That's why we don't focus on this self-employed.
Any question?
Well, thank you very much to Alessandro for a very good suggestion to our paper on the quarter, to the first presentation. And actually, we're considering the patterns of legalization as a function of other individual aspects is very important topic. It is linked to the selectivity, selection bias. It is really a ghost for this kind of studies. And so, of course, we can see in Europa considered those who are regular at the interview and are a very selected group because, those with more problematic situation probably left the country before. And this is the same thing for the other presentation as well, of course. And there is very little we can do with this kind of data. I just want to add additional comments on that. Another source of selectivity for the presentation is about the fact that some previous research suggests that those who obtain the citizenship have a higher rate of migrate from the country. And so actually in this sense may have, I don't know how it can be linked to the outcome. So those who decide to move after the acquisition of the citizenship, this is why they have the lower performance in the labor market, so they escape from a difficult situation, or the contrary, they have a very high potentiality and then decided to go elsewhere. I don't know. It is not. It's only a curiosity. If you have some ideas about that.
So your question is about the classical selection issues, which is normally in migration studies. So those who migrate generally, right, are self-selected. Okay? So what you argue is that those who get citizenship are even more self-selected.
Yes,
so they have abilities, unobserved abilities. Okay? So this is your issue?
Because you can see those who acquire citizenship and decide to stay in the countries. So of course you cannot see those who decide to go elsewhere.
To go back or go elsewhere.
Nowhere.
I see.
And so it is additional. Actually, it is a third source of selectivity. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
If you have some idea of this, the link between the labor outcomes of those who decide to go elsewhere. I don't know if you have probably from the literature.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, in this study, I don't know how to solve it, but I get your point. So, in the case that these people who get citizenship is, let's say, positively selected because so there is a part of those who don't get citizenship that go back to their origin country. So, in this case, we will observe, let's say, we will inflate, let's say, our positive result, or the positive result we found, right? While in the second case, when these people that stay in the country are negatively selected because other people get citizenship in order to go to other countries. I don't know if I get your point. So, for example, I know that some nationalities just get citizenship, for example, in Italy because they want to go to Germany, but to have the same rights in Germany. So this is a classical case, as you mentioned, of another typology of selection. Okay? So, in the first case, we will have a positive selection because those who remain in the country are positively selected compared to those who go back to their origin country, but they are negatively selected if we compare them with those who move to other European countries, right? Yeah, this could be an issue actually, but unfortunately this needs an instrument or something we actually don't have. Yeah, this could be an additional issue. This could be an additional issue with this. But I don't know the extent it will affect the results because, as you see, we have these opposing effects. So we don't observe neither the first nor the second. So I don't know the result of the two.
If I may ask another question, I don't know. It's a very technical question.
Yeah.
So you develop 3 equations simultaneously. If
Two equations.
Two.
Two equations, yeah.
Is the
In the first case, the bivariate, Prokic, and in the second case, a treatment effect model, because the second dependent variable, the occupational status, is continuous. So I have to use this treatment effect model instead of the
I
bivariate.
saw 3 equations in the slides, so
Yeah, but I explained also that in the first case we estimated simultaneously the first and the second, and in the second case the first and the third.
oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so because the third is only among those who are occupied.
Yes, yes,
are
exactly, exactly.
And you use the same epsilon, the same residual. It's not correlated residual, exactly the same.
No, this method implies that the residual are correlated. The residuals are correlated. It's not the same. It's not the same residual. But okay, you are thinking about the Heckman problem, so that's typology of stuff. I mean, I looked at the literature, and this treatment effect model solves that issue, even without the exclusionary restrictions, usually used by the Heckman selection model.
Now, if you want to...
Yeah, it's quite technical, so yeah, it's
if there are
quite
no any
technical.
questions,